Okay, those of you saying that this looks like Amber Heard, cracking me up. Oh, oh my gosh, 1 second. All right, I'm about to bring Brett on, but I wanted to say hello to everybody myself. Let me know if you cannot hear me or if there are any issues throughout the night with audio or video. Okay, Brett, I'm bringing you on. What?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Doesn't look like Amber Heard. That looks like me when I wake up.
Well, I doubt that. I doubt that, but I just wanted to introduce everyone to our newest panelist. We have changed, so we've changed nights that we're going to be doing this because I'm going to be busy probably for at least the next month on the weekends. So we will be doing, everybody will be doing this time every week from now on. But we have changed nights, and I thought since we were changing nights, we might bring on a new panelist. And so you have heard of G.I. Joe. This is G.I. Troll. And G.I. Troll is going to be dealing with any trolls that might slip through my moderators tonight and slip past. And so this is G.I. Troll, and he is ready to engage at any time. I guess it could also be a she. We don't want to be, guilty.
That's rude, yeah. It could just be a tomboy girl troll.
It could. It absolutely could. I had not seen the Amber Heard resemblance until one of you pointed it out.
Look, I watched, I was mentioned on our show today, I watched an old episode. I'm rewatching the show Criminal Minds. I love those first 5 seasons of Criminal Minds. I think they're great procedural television. And in season 1, there's an episode where she plays a Hollywood starlet being stalked by someone. And it's really funny. She's I don't think she's aged that much. I don't whatever you think of Amber Heard, I don't think she's an unattractive woman. And that episode was from 2005. Mm-hmm. So that's like 20 years ago now.
Yeah, 18. People don't. There are a lot of Johnny Depp fans, understandably, who don't like it when anything positive is said about Amber Heard. But I have to say that I have not seen her look unattractive, except she did look really bloated during the actual trial. And I think it's very haggard and stuff. That's the only time I've seen her look bad, though. The rest of the time, she's definitely freshened up for what she's been doing lately.
Are you going to watch that movie she had coming out? You should review it for your channel.
The horror
one
movie?
Where she plays like a doctor in like some village that's being overrun by witches.
Yes.
And she's like, you got to follow the science. You should review that for your channel. People would love that.
No, I should. That's a great idea. You all should do that. People would love that.
Yeah.
No, I have taken some shots at some of Amber's performances online on Instagram. I think one of the ones that tickled me the most, that cracked me up the most, she played a CIA assassin in 3 Days to Kill with Kevin Costner.
Was that like a straight to DVD?
No, it was a McG film. It was a big Kevin Costner, big action film. This was when he was dating Johnny, or when she was married to Johnny Depp. So I don't know if he pulled some strings or what.
I'm a fan of, for the most part, I understand a lot of people don't like McG, but I have no problem. He was a producer on Chuck, which is one of my favorite shows.
No, I think
Chuck is one of my favorite shows of all time, so he gets a pass for me. McG
He's done some good stuff. No, and look, the movie itself, it got mixed reviews. I thought it was a good movie, but Amber Heard, so the opening scene actually is Amber Heard being debriefed on this mission. And let's just say that it definitely reinforced my view of her acting skills or lack thereof. But I do want to check. I hate to admit it. I do want to check out her new movie. I'm just not going to pay that much for it because I looked it up, and at least I guess I was looking at Amazon or Apple or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was going to be like $20, I guess, because it's still in theaters. It was going to be $20, and I'm just like, I am morally opposed to paying $20 to watch Amber Heard.
McG also did he did Supernatural. I didn't watch Supernatural, but I know a lot of the people who love Supernatural. So,
Is that the one that was kind of like the X-Files? Like they're going around sort of investigating
the brothers, Jared Padalecki, yeah. It's one of those shows where I guess from what I was told, it got self-referential after a period of time. Mm-hmm. But it was on the CW for 13 seasons. 13
yeah,
seasons.
that's longevity.
It's crazy.
Wow. Well,
Crazy.
I don't know if I ever saw an episode of it, but I heard good things.
It's one of those shows where I've watched the pilot like 3 or 4 times. Like it's one of those shows I always go back and I retry. I'm like, maybe this will be because your taste changes over time. Like I was like, okay, I'll rewatch it, and it's a really, really well done pilot episode.
Yeah.
But it's just not in my realm of like that type of. It kind of reminds, like I loved Hannibal, but Hannibal was shorter seasons and way less content, right? Like I don't like the over the top gore, which I mean it was more like jump scares than supernatural, but like it wasn't my cup of tea. But anybody who loves horror movies would probably enjoy those early seasons of Supernatural.
Well, I always liked the X-Files. Was that
love the X-Files.
Was that before your time? No, you liked the
X-Files. I didn't find the X-Files until years later. But I've seen all the seasons more than once. I consider the first X-Files movie to be one of the benchmarks for making a movie based on a television show, meaning that anybody can go in and watch that first X-Files movie, Fight the Future, and get something out of it, even if they haven't watched the show, which is very hard to do, especially with something. Yeah. The season 1 of the first X-Files movie, Fight the Future, which I have a poster of in my room.
I liked that. I've seen it. Yes.
Yeah, it came out. I believe in between seasons 5 and 6, or between 4 and 5, or 5 and 6. So it had 4 or 5 years of lore going into that movie. And when I watched it in theaters, when it came out, I hadn't seen any of the TV show and didn't discover the TV show till years later. But that first movie was great.
I remember I had seen a few episodes, but I came into that movie also when I saw it. And I think I was in maybe middle school or even high school, but I had really low expectations. And I thought it was really at times scary and very creepy. And it's like you said, it could work as a self-contained movie. And that's the thing that we're going to get off the X-Files in a minute, but that's the thing that I really like about the X-Files and shows like that, is that each episode did function in a self-contained way. And I really like those kind like anthologies, like the feel of it was kind of an anthology, a semi-anthology.
Well, they had the Monster of the Week episodes, and then they had the conspiracy episodes, and they would break them up. The conspiracy episodes would be at the mid-season finale and at interesting points throughout the season. But as the show went on, the conspiracy episodes just got so convoluted and so ridiculous people fell back on really appreciating the Monster of the Week episodes. My favorite episode of the X-Files is an episode called Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. And it has almost no of Mulder and Scully. It's almost all told from the perspective of the cigarette smoking man, played by William B. Davis. And it's him as he's got his gun trained on the lone gunman. And basically you hear him, like in his mind, he's going through he's listening to them in their office, discussing the past of the cigarette smoking man. And you get his whole history from when he was first recruited by the government. His dad was a communist. He's the one who assassinated JFK and MLK, and he stopped Russia, and he helped the U.S. win the Olympics at the 1980 Miracle on Ice. It's a fantastic episode, and it's a bottle episode that was shot for less money than the rest of the season because most of it takes place on a soundstage, and that was not a conspiracy episode, other than the fact that it involves the background of one of the conspiracy characters.
But that's one of your favorites because you really got into his story, his backstory. Yeah. It sounds almost like, I like the way they're inserting him into history. It's kind of like a Forrest Gump, but like
there's actually a nod to Forrest Gump in the episode. Where he's talking about chocolates on a bench with someone. And in the episode, what he really wanted to be, he didn't want to be like an all-knowing government assassin and kingmaker. He wanted to be a novelist. And he's a failed novelist. That's his story. Everyone should go watch that episode. If you haven't, even if you didn't necessarily love the X-Files, I think everyone could watch that and really like it.
They had a lot of great episodes. Okay, we got a super chat. Bucky Ducky says, "Is the open door behind Brett, or is it a window? Is that a door or window?" Okay.
What the hell? Who has what door looks like that?
I guess it could be like one of those like glass,
opening out to your
opening out to your patio. I don't know, but that is what it is, everyone. Now the real question is, For $50, he will open the window.
Will I? Will I? Yes. Give away my location. Then somebody from Reddit will find out where I am.
Oh God.
And I'll be taken out.
That's what he's here for.
Yes.
Okay, so I build this online. I advertise this as a Pearl Davis episode, and we're not going to spend the whole time talking about Pearl Davis, but would we call Tim your boss or your associate or your colleague? What would be the right?
He's my boss. I work for, so yeah, that's a fair amount of what would it be called? Disclaimer here. Yeah, I'm a Timcast employee. So Tim's wrong about everything. How about that? I'll just take Pearl's side just for the sake of being contrary. No, I saw this exchange over the Thanksgiving weekend. You know what my initial thought was when I saw all of it?
What?
Who's got the time to be arguing on Twitter over the holidays? That's what I thought about.
Well, I mean, Tim and Pearl, and frankly, me, I guess, because I was online too much too.
You guys were all arguing.
So it really wasn't, I don't want to mischaracterize it as like they were having a war on Twitter. It wasn't anything like that. It was really a dispute, though, or a difference of opinion over something that Pearl said about cheating and men. And I'm sorry, I'm too lazy to put them up on the screen, but I have all of them here. I'm gonna talk about some of them. And also one of the mods, Vanessa, she said she lost her wrench. Yeah, no, that's not intentional. I don't even know what that means, but I assume it means some kind of power that you have to to do something on.
Wrench is for the mods, right?
Okay, yeah. So that definitely wasn't intentional. Give me a few minutes here to get into this next thing, and then I'll go online and I'll figure it out. But yeah, it's not intentional. I'm not turning off mods. Let's see. Okay, what's going on? First, you sent me a Twitter link. I don't do Twitter, and now Vanessa. No, I don't know. Y'all are, the mods are worried about something that's totally not to be worried about. All right, things are just like busy and crazy, and maybe I pressed a button I didn't know that I was pressing. So no fear on that, but it's going to take me a minute to get to it. So Pearl, she has basically her opinion. It seems like, I'm not an expert on Pearl Davis, but her opinion seems to be that society focuses too much on men's failings in relationships and marriage, particularly cheating. Okay, which she assigns as being, like a male issue, just like women nagging in a relationship or something like that. So she sees things in a very gendered way. But she and others seem to feel that society is too hard. We are too hard on cheaters, particularly men in relationships. So like if a guy is married, has kids, and then he cheats compulsively, or maybe even cheats once or twice, right? But she was defending at one point a guy who was cheating compulsively throughout the marriage, that we view that guy as being automatically like, oh, he's no good, and of course the woman is right to divorce him, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas what Pearl is saying is that we shouldn't view cheating any worse than we look at a wife who's nagging, or what are some of these other stereotypical things that people say about women? Won't have sex, things like that. So what do you think? Because again, Tim got into a conversation, I think, with her about this view. He's basically was saying like it's a very negative view of human nature that we should just accept cheating. She seems to be just accepting it. So what do you think?
I think that when you look, I've never been married, but from what I understand, you take a vow to be faithful to that person, right? That's I've never gone through the process. It's a vow to be faithful and in sickness and in health and all that stuff. Is there a provision for nagging in there? I don't feel like that those should be weighted in the same category.
I mean, I don't either, but so I'm trying to be charitable about her perspective here, because I did not want to get on here and say, oh, I can't stand Pearl Davis or whatever. There are some things, I would say probably about 40% of what Pearl says or writes, I think is valid. Like I get some of her critiques of the way that society tends to infantilize women in certain ways, the way that society is perhaps too hard on certain stereotypically male foibles and not on women's. And then look, I would agree with Pearl that there's a certain unreality that women as a group often seem to have about life and their expectations for it. Okay, having said that, though, that I agree with those things, it seems like to me, though, she really is trying to stoke up a sort of male rage about women and a sort of entitlement then about the idea that it's okay for men to cheat. And then she kept saying, well, I'm not saying it's okay, I'm not saying it's okay. But then she gave all of these examples of men who had cheated, some compulsively on their wives and put their wives through like decades of heartache. But she says, but they forgave them and it was the best thing for everyone. I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with that. And I think that's what Tim was saying.
Yeah. When first of all, if I was to guess, be wary of anybody who profits from your rage all the time. When I look at most of what she says, she's what, 26? She's 26 years old. I think that she has found a very lucrative business model that is based very heavily on the rage that has been stoked up between the genders. And I would say take everything that someone says that's going to profit them heavily based on your anger with a grain of salt, and a heavy one at that. Like the idea that she's excusing it. Like, I think what was Tim essentially saying, that it's a dim view of men in general. And I do believe that there's something to be said about what you said earlier, which is that society in a lot of ways, whether it's through how we look at divorce in this country, whether it's child custody and things like that, which has in a lot of ways been rigged against men, which is where a lot of that very, very reasonable and well-placed problem, like issues a lot of men have with the system comes from. And that's valid and that's perfectly reasonable. But just be wary of anybody that's selling you that much anger when it's monetized.
Yeah, and there was something that I posted today also yesterday about Pearl, and this is something else that bothers me. She really, really promotes this traditional wife ideology, which I'm not saying that every aspect of that is terrible. And like, I know, like when I went on your show, there were a number of things that Mary talked about in a very sensible way, but reinforcing the idea that women have gotten too far or been led astray from a more traditional, perhaps healthier role in life. And so I don't have an issue with that perspective, but I really don't like it when people like Pearl really push the idea that if you are not, and I say this as someone who doesn't have kids and is not married, that if you don't choose to do those things, then you're somehow like a failure in your existential purpose as a woman, or that even worse, that you're really violating some guiding principle for your life, that you should be living this kind of a life. And what gets me is Pearl Davis, she's 27 years old. She is not married. She doesn't have kids. And so she's really, obviously, she's a hyper career woman. I mean, the stuff that she's doing, kudos to her. She has had insane growth on YouTube and on social media. I'm sure she's bringing in now at her level hundreds of thousands of dollars, doing major appearances on Piers Morgan. She does a show every single day. You know how much time it takes. She is absolutely 100% a committed career woman who is choosing what she would say is the inappropriately masculine route in life. And to those of you who might say that she's only doing so because she hasn't found the right guy yet, and once she finds the right guy, then she's going to jump on marriage and having kids and homemaking and all that. No, come on. One of the big points that men's rights guys love to make is that women's standards are too high and unrealistic, and that there are tons of nice guys and good providers out there. If you women would just lower your standards and get your head out of the clouds and give one of us a chance. You're telling me, not you, but people in my audience, you're telling me that Pearl Davis has never had a decent offer of interest from a guy, that she's 27 years old and she just, nobody good has come along? No, bullshit. She is way into her career, and fine for her, great for her. She's successful, but she's peddling this hypocritical BS to guys that she knows are angry because they've had their hearts broken, or women aren't showing them sexual or romantic interest, and it's easy to stoke that fire. I'll stop the rant now, but that's what I think.
The other thing is that a lot of people in that position, the logic is that, look, I'm spreading the message, therefore do as I say, not as I do. In a lot of those cases, I have a hard time discussing, like, even from my perspective, because I am not married. So like, I'm not going to be the one who's going to tell you how to live your life or what is right for men and women. I'll have the discussion if people want to have it. We ended up talking a little bit about this on the podcast today, because we were talking about Jamie Foxx and about Diddy and the ramifications of Me Too in the current era. And me and Mary come from very different perspectives on those issues, and that's completely fine. But for the people whose like whole channel is like this, I think it's a little bit different when it's relationship channels and stuff like that. I would almost prefer, like, we talk a lot about movies and entertainment and our perspectives on movies and entertainment, right? So that's uniquely for a lot of people subjective. So if you feel that I have given you advice in the past, or I've given you advice on a TV show or a movie, and I said, check this out, and you felt that my sensibilities fell in line with yours, and then you went and checked stuff out because of that, that makes perfect sense. But I'm not sure how much I would want to take advice from somebody who isn't active. Like, when it comes to relationships, I don't know if I would want to take advice from somebody who isn't actively living the life that they're portraying. Right? Like, if you're not married and with kids, how am I supposed to buy that you wholeheartedly know with all this, with 100% of your soul, that this is the right thing to do? And I do believe that this country has sorely taken a step back from really appreciating family. I do think that that's a problem here, but I'm going to take anyone who's not actually actively living that with a grain of salt, especially when there's so much money to be made on it. Like, nobody's doing this. This isn't out of charity. That's part of the business model, right? The business model is to tell you that you're doing it to better society. The business model is to tell people that you know the way to help fix Western civilization. Well, that's a grand claim to make. It's a grand claim to want to fix the issues between the genders. But I would argue that the relationship between the genders has not improved one bit since the introduction of social media and dating culture discussion on these channels. The world, it's not the number one cause for it, but things aren't any better now that podcasts like whatever exist. Things are not any better now that podcasts like all of these, whether it's feminine, and I'm not just talking about these, I'm talking about feminists too. Feminists their own version of this garbage. And the world has not gotten more loving, and we are not any better in our relationships with the sexes since these people have come on the scene. And I do believe that a lot of them probably do believe a lot of what they're saying, or believe everything that they say, right? I'm not saying that they don't believe it. I'm saying that when money's involved, even if you're not actively trying to deceive, that when money takes precedence and you have to say, do I go with the more reasonable title or do I go with the one that makes people a little angrier? And if the second that question has to be asked on anything, you're wading into territory where your emotions are going to be manipulated by the people who are selling these things. Maybe not on purpose, maybe not even consciously on their part, but it is happening. And I just think we were better off before all this stuff. But I also believe we were better off before social media and the internet. I still think the internet is the worst thing that has ever happened to society.
I mean, I can't disagree with this the overall sentiment there. I really can't. And you were talking about well, let me do the super chat. Sorry, and then we'll talk about this. So Shane Wilder, is that one of yours? Yeah. It says,
Shane!
Kurt and Dasovic back in the saddle again. Be careful, Brett. You've got a busy day tomorrow. Don't burn your candle at both ends. I hear that's a felony in some states. Oh, what are you doing tomorrow?
We have episode 500 of Pop Culture Crisis tomorrow. We will be live for 5 hours from 12 to 5 tomorrow.
Oh, that's a great opportunity for me to plug your show. Keep going.
It's going to be a very, very long week this week, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, congratulations. That's great. Yes. 500 episodes. Y'all are you're so productive.
We do a lot. Like we took the days that we took Thanksgiving and the rest of the week off. And by Saturday, I felt like I was losing my mind without anything to do.
Oh man. I bet so. So what we were talking about earlier, like I totally think that there's validity to the idea that society has decentered family, that we've gotten away from family, that also that feminism has pushed to a lot of women the idea that you can't be fulfilled as a homemaker or you can't be fulfilled primarily through your role as wife and mother. Like, I don't think that's right. And look, I always have to talk to myself when I'm debating these types of things in my mind. I always have to remind myself that obviously I'm idiosyncratic. I'm not married, don't have kids, have never literally once had the desire to have kids. And so I have to remind myself, like, obviously I am weird compared to most women, and I shouldn't seek to like view the world for women as a whole through my own prism. Yeah. But I do think though, that sometimes these women idealize motherhood and marriage as well. And I don't mean idealize it and saying that it's going to be perfect or anything. I mean, that's one of the things Pearl is saying, and the opposite of, like, you should be prepared for it to be rough and deal with it. But this idea that that's going to be total fulfillment as well. Or if you have a desire to do something else, then that's a kind of perversion or something on your part. And look, I do want to say that back when in mid 20th century, when America was much more centered around the family and the nuclear family, and when it was really the height of the celebration of the homemaker and homemaking, you know, there was a book called The Feminine Mystique that talked about a problem that has no name. And it was story after story. And I know Betty Friedan, she's got her issues and she's polarizing, but it was story after story, interviews that she had with real housewives who talked about how they felt such shame because they had a perfect house and they had 2 or 3 or 5 children and they had a husband who, you know, was faithful and brought home enough money and whatever, but they felt this emptiness because it felt like there should be still something more for my mind and for me to do. And so I just don't want us to get into a situation like this pendulum, it seems like we always are in, where it's just back and forth from these extremes. And most of us who have sense, I think, and reason, we're in the middle on a lot of this.
The pendulum, I don't see the pendulum ever swinging back that far the other way. If for no other reason than like legally, we would not be allowed to, because the way the legal system is set up has put protections in place. No fault divorce. Mary would point out birth control and all the myriad of ways. And the thing that I always point out is, like, all of these problems, what they are, in a lot of ways, these are the nasty, ugly downside of living in a free, liberal society that allows you as a sovereign individual to go out into the world and go after whatever it is that you wish, right? Men and women alike. And perhaps a lot of people didn't put a lot of thought into that when women's voting rights were put into practice, right? And when women started moving outside the home and all of these things, I don't see any of that as a reason why you go back on a society that has, to this day, still considered the pinnacle. Like, living now here in America, in the West, however bad the relationships might be, what's the divorce rate? Like 50%? Sure. We are still the greatest country in the greatest time period in history, right? This is the most prosperous time that anyone has ever existed. And I don't see how rolling back those things is ever going to lead to the type of utopian relationship between, utopian world between men and women that people think that it will. Culturally, this stuff would have to start at home, right? It would have to be with men and women having kids and trying to impress upon their kids their values, which may run contrary to the feminist beliefs being pushed out by the mainstream press or the more men's rights beliefs being pushed out by part of the underground society where most of that stuff is coming from, right? Not mainstream. And I think part of it is it's about impressing upon your family, your own family and kids. You do kind of have to be the change you want to see in the world. And not every kid is going to turn out great because you imparted great wisdom upon them. But I think we are learning that, for instance, one of the downsides was we trusted our kids into schools and institutions that raised them to have beliefs that were pretty anti-American. And part of that was a lot of rabid feminism that came out of colleges, right, at the end of last century leading into now. So maybe with a new generation of parents who understand that you don't just send your kids off to college and expect them to come back well-adjusted and enlightened, in a lot of ways, completely the opposite. You should send them off to college, trade school, college, but understand that you still have to impart your wisdom upon them so that they can take what they learn at school, take what they learn from you, and hopefully find their way somewhere to the middle. And I do believe the middle is more prominent than people give it credit for. Whenever these discussions come up, it always ends up becoming about the extremes at either end of the spectrum. I've got plenty of friends who are very almost leftists, right? Who are married with kids, living normal lives outside of their politics. Sometimes I don't even know if it necessarily connects in their mind, right? A lot of my friends who are very liberal, in a lot of ways, I guess I still consider myself mostly a libertarian, but live in this society where I just feel like we find ourselves in our own echo chamber, and it's better to go and look at what's going on in the actual world around you and make your value judgments based on what you see in the real world, not necessarily what you're reading through curated algorithms and people selling you a product like their whether it's their podcasts, whether it's their dating their online course on how to pick up women like some of these dudes do. Products being sold to you.
Yeah, that's definitely true about the product thing. And I mean, most of what you said, I do agree with. It's interesting you mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned, even in passing, the issue of women and voting, because actually this is something that people have misunderstood about me based on one tweet that's out there, which I've never addressed it before because frankly I don't care, but I do want to clarify something. So I tweeted one time that that women getting the vote had disastrous consequences, something to that effect. And people, because I do have a lot of people who are not men's rights people, or who do not have the Pearl Davis perspective that women shouldn't have the vote. I do have a lot of people like that in my audience, most of my audience, and some of them were like, whoa, what's this? I do believe that women should absolutely have the right to vote, because I think that is a basic fundamental recognition of someone's worth and as a human being, and equality and so forth. But what I will say, and so I disagree with Pearl there, but what I will say is that my personal beliefs about my personal, which I don't like to get into mostly, but my personal political beliefs, my views on economics, my views on the welfare state, and et cetera, they tend to be more in opposition to the way that women traditionally have voted. And so that was what I meant, is basically to say, I wish that more women voted like me or had the political beliefs that I have. But that having been said, and so I see in a way where people come from when they complain about that. It's interesting. Hundreds of years ago, you had to be in various cultures, you had to be a property owner to vote. Yeah. And people might say, well, that's crazy. But actually, I think that's sort of in some ways a sensible way of doing things, and that would exclude me and a lot of other people. So I'm not putting myself above, right? But that owning property, generally, it does say something basic about someone's ability to to navigate
Yeah.
life successfully. And again, I say that as someone who doesn't, right, own a property. But I'm just saying that I totally have sympathy for the idea that voting is should be a serious thing, and you don't want people who are completely, uneducated or incapable of voting well to be doing it. And I understand that that there are some people who think that women are just not as educated or insightful as men. To me, that's sexist. But I do think though that I wish more women had my perspective on things, because I do think that there's a real gulf there, or gap.
I would like them to remove party affiliation from voting tickets.
That's a great point.
I would rather that, because I think it would discourage a lot of people who have a base level understanding of politics only so much as to know where they tend to fall on the line. And especially once you get down to local elections and stuff like that, you might find that there is a vast majority, or you might find people that have different sensibilities that are far more likely to affect your actual life, in your bottom dollar, in your life, in your actual community. And to be well educated on the ideas would be preferable. But if not that, it would discourage people who are just going to say they voted so they can get the little sticker and then check D or R right down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would definitely cause people to really evaluate their views more and scrutinize the candidates more if it wasn't just Republican or Democrat. So anyway, I guess what I kind of want to end with on the Pearl Davis thing is that I recognize that she's out there, like you said, she's selling something. And unfortunately, you were very right. Unfortunately, y'all, and I've talked about this before, you have to be really crass and vulgar at times. I mean, vulgar is in like just very sort of like in your face, and using like really loud slogans and having really expressing kind of extreme things. You have to do that to get attention. And it is a line, as you know, it is a line at times that's very hard to walk or to really sort of negotiate with yourself. Because look, I very well know that there are certain opinions that I could be loudly expressing, or I could be getting more political, or I could be more in line with the manosphere or whatever in my views. And I know I would get a lot more viewers, because I'd really be stoking things, right? And engaged in some of these fights that people are so into, but it's just not what I feel that I want to, or I'm supposed to do. But that having been said, every time I make a thumbnail, every time I come up with a title, every time, I do a video, there is a part of me that does have to kind of push things, not change my beliefs, but the expression of them, making the expression of them much more harsh at times, or vulgar, or in your face, because it's just so hard to get attention. And I don't know if you've seen Eli Roth's Thanksgiving yet. Have you seen that horror movie?
No. I saw it. Was a lot of people recommended it over the weekend to me.
For me, it was I'm not going to spoil anything. For me, it was hit or miss, but overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it had an amazing, masterful opening scene about a Black Friday riot. I even put it on my channel, copied version, because I thought it was so cool. But I also liked some of the themes that he got into. And one of those themes is the idea of how the internet, and it's just like you were saying earlier, the internet is really a very loud, vulgar zoo. And it pushes us to become that way, when really that's not, I think, the mode of discourse we would really prefer.
I like to think, like, for me, I'm just not that way. Like, I have to really, like, and part of it's also, there may be nuance in the actual discussions that are had here. And I do believe that that's important, because what the hell is the point of having discussions? Like, if you're not going to at least try to get into the minutia of what you're talking about. But the actual promotion and the actual headlines always seem to be more harsh than what you're actually talking about. And that happens with us too. But part of it's also because when you make your headlines, when you make your thumbnails, you talk in a way that you don't talk as a human being, right?
Right.
Like, for us, it's like Disney fails. I'm like, I don't say stuff like I don't say shit like that in my daily life. I just don't. But I understand that it's a shorthand to get people to look to what we're saying. So everyone sells their soul a little bit at a time. So on one hand, I'm not saying that Pearl shouldn't do what she's doing. In a free society, she is free to do that. I'm saying that we as individuals who really do spend a lot of our lives now consuming content, so much of our lives, the best thing you can do is be aware that what you're watching is something that's profitable for someone else. Be always willing to kind of be introspective about how it relates to you, and try not to let all of it get you angry or out of pocket. I really do believe in a lot of ways that as important as I believe the internet is to society, especially a free society where you are free to share your views with others, I do think it is probably the most dangerous thing that's ever been created. In a lot of ways, this is a small scale version of that, right? It's just that topics that were not on the same scale of discussion 10 years ago now very much are so. And I do want to point out that a lot of times for me, I think that the stuff between men and women, my number one belief is that the reason why it makes everyone so angry is that when women have these discussions, when women make their TikToks where they're complaining about men, right? Back before social media, that's something they would have done with their friends, over brunch or something. And it would have been contained to a group of people who you share history and experience with. Same with men. Men get together and they bitch about problems with their women or problems with their, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
The idea here is that now what was once something to be shared as a confidence between you and those you have developed a certain bond with is now shared to everyone. And then you wonder why somebody is going to take what you say the wrong way or draw the wrong conclusion. Well, no shit. Like it wasn't meant to be shared with that. And I don't believe we as a society, we as people, were meant to just be constantly put on input mode, taking in the harshest critiques and the harshest facts or the harshest interpretations that others have of those around them. We weren't meant to do that.
It's very true. And I think one of the things that has got me irritated, not only with Pearl, but also with this particular group of people on the internet, is that I can be in a really calm mood and I'll see something that to me seems so misogynist, like women, people posting women have nothing to bring to the table. What do they bring to marriage? And I'm thinking, you know what? I understand. I'm not saying I agree at all, right? Because it pisses me off. But I try to be charitable and I try to say this is a guy, and this particular guy, I'm not going to say his name, but I know him who's posting. He has had a lot of terrible experiences with women, and this is his thing, just like one of my things is exposing Me Too hoaxes. And so he spends a lot of time thinking about this and seething in it. And then also he gets all this positive feedback from people for saying this stuff. But it is poisonous. It does get me upset. And I'm thinking when I'm looking at this stuff, it's like when you go on Twitter, you see often one after another of people saying things in the harshest way possible, including me at times, saying things in the harshest way possible. And it's one hot button issue after another. It's like, okay, from the misogynist post to then something else that's pissing me off, right? And
I'm shocked sometimes when I see certain people who I follow and I'm like, bro, you have an opinion on everything. I don't have an opinion on everything. I don't. Like, first of all, nobody has enough time in their day to be as informed about the things that they're so snarky about as they should be to be that snarky.
I don't. I sure as hell don't. I think about that a lot, actually.
I think that's partially why I don't. Like, it's like when the stuff that I tweet is usually related directly to my job, right? It's related directly to stuff in the entertainment industry, all of these things. And even then, I don't have it in me to be as kind of incendiary as a lot of other people are. And some people are great at it. I will give them that. They are fantastic at boosting their engagement online. But it's just, I can't do it, but I also can't begrudge the people that do, because people seem more than happy to be part of the attention economy that way. So who are we to tell them that they can't? I can think that it might be a little bit bad for public discourse, but I'm not going to tell them they can't do it.
Oh no, absolutely. And I don't think that anyone in any way should be censoring Pearl.
Nope.
And I don't see a place for some of the critiques that she gets based on stupid things like her looks. First of all, a lot of people online trying to say that she's ugly. She's not. She definitely crosses the attractiveness bar where you would say she's an attractive woman. And so that, things like that, they're not they're not called for, they're not helpful, they're silly. Um so and I think that you and I being in this business, trying to make a good business out of it, we understand that there are times when you do have to just amp things up. And so like somebody in the comments was saying Pearl's an entertainer and a kind of a showman or a showwoman. And I understand that. I think one thing that you said that I just want to emphasize more, you were talking about how a lot of the conversations now that we see online, either on social media or we see views that people are espousing on YouTube, these used to be things that people would only talk about in private with certain like groups of friends or whatever. Like, so like women bitching about their husbands or boyfriends and men bitching about women or what have you, right? And now that's sort of out poisoning all of this. And I just want to say that men and women, at least in the heterosexual model, right? Men and women, yes, they have an attraction and an affinity for each other, but they also have a built-in capacity for conflict because our desires are generally not well aligned. And I don't mean men are so different than women, but this is what I mean. Most of the time, when a man wants to have sex with a woman or wants to have a relationship or whatever, most of the time he's going to get turned down unless he's like, Brad Pitt or a billionaire or whatever. Most of the time he's going to get turned down just because, that's how things are, And actually, it also works the other way with women. There are, I know maybe not as much sexual choosiness, but there are a lot of women I've known. Every woman that I've known, including myself, has been turned down on multiple occasions for sex, for boyfriendship, whatever, right? And so here's what I'm trying to say. When we have such men and women, such strong feelings and desires and yearnings and all kinds of things that are attached to the other person needing to fulfill those, that creates a huge well of disappointment and even anger and even at times borderline hatred for the fact that you so badly want something, whatever it is, whether it's commitment or sex or whatever, that the other person's not giving you. And then it hooks into self-esteem issues that a lot of people have. And I understand. And so what I'm trying to say is, I do think it's sad that there seem to be so many men and women who have what really honestly is just a kind of a necessary rage at times, anger toward each other, that's just a byproduct of this system we're living in. I mean, of life and of biology and so I think oftentimes people would do better just to recognize, what, this is just life. This is just the nature of being in a dichotomous, sexual system or whatever, biology. And yeah, it sucks a lot or at times, but that's how it is. But instead, you have all these people online saying, women are blah, 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 and that's why you're so angry, right? These and women, feminists saying women, men are this and this and this, and that sucks and everything, instead of just understanding these are just basic dynamics at times.
I think for me, it's also a little bit different because as somebody like, look, I went through years of substance abuse, finding myself in recovery, getting sober, and all of these things, which puts you on a path of introspection. So I tend to, on my good days, I'm introspective and I try to rationally analyze however situations in my life may go. And on the best days, I can diagnose whatever a problem is, whoever may be at fault, and find a reasonable response. My less positive outcome is that I tend to be someone where if something goes wrong, I tend to try to take the path of radical ownership, right? I try to think like, look, I don't like it most of the time when everyone blames everyone else for their freaking problems anyways. I find that to be tiresome and annoying. I think that most people, okay, let me rephrase that. Even that's getting hyperbolic. I think it's very common for people to want to pass the buck onto other people and blame whatever shortcomings may be going on in their lives. And there's plenty of examples. Like, look, I've watched plenty of the MGTOW videos where these dudes tell these stories about absolutely getting obliterated in divorce court and having their lives ruined.
Yeah.
Now, perfect. But as a society, I feel like for me, the best path forward is to say, look, take ownership of your mistakes and your actions. Don't always assume the worst of everyone you come into contact with just because you don't have a positive interaction with them every time. Don't be naive to the idea that you could be getting used or manipulated in some way, but find yourself in a path closer to the middle. And even if life isn't perfect, you may live longer because you're not going to have an aneurysm from being constantly angry all the time. I understand that might not be the most reasonable path for everyone, and that somebody's own personal life experience is going to make what I just said not applicable. I'm not saying that applies to everyone. I'm saying for me, a good rule of thumb is to look at your own actions first and ask, did I do something wrong? Could I have behaved differently? Have I advocated for myself in a way that is not toxic or antithetical to working things out? I just feel like we love to pass the buck these days.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And nobody misunderstand what he's saying. He's not saying like someone like, for instance, Johnny Depp, or someone who's been through abuse, who's been taken to the cleaners, unfairly divorced or whatever, should just say, oh, well, it's probably my fault or whatever. I know it's not at all what you're saying. I think that I think that there's just oftentimes in life, all of this anger that we're stoking, I don't think that it necessarily, unless there's a specific injustice that we're trying to right or whatever, I don't think that it necessarily does us a lot of good. And so when I look at sometimes some of the vitriolic anger online by people who, I don't know if it's the best way to handling things. Now, I see in the comments somebody said, "Why are you trying to make things equal? Men are being more falsely accused by women at, what did you say, an astounding rate or something." Sorry, I lost the comment. Yeah, no, I understand that. There are a lot of terrible things. I mean, I talk about it all the time on my channel with the Me Too hoaxes. There are a lot of terrible things being done to men by women, and there are a lot of attitudes that I would like to see changed. But I also recognize that there's a lot of terrible things maybe in other ways being done to women. I do believe that there are a large number of rapes, actual assaults that are never solved or adjudicated and things like that. And this is and my view is just that in life, pretty much whatever hand you're dealt, you're going to have some, and I think this is kind of what you were getting at too, Brett, is in life, whatever hand you're dealt, you're going to have a set of disadvantages with that and a set of advantages. And so to me, this discussion of like, who has it worse, or this sort of like, I don't think it's really helpful.
Yeah. And both sides love to do that, right? Everyone loves to advocate why their side has it worse and go from there. I just choose not to. I'm going to focus on me in my life. I saw City Crusher in the comments is keeping me honest. He says, how does that solve child support? Again, not married. I'm not asking you to take, I'm saying for me personally, this is how I go forward in life. And I'm not saying that every circumstance is going to be forward. Here's the other thing. I don't think you can solve those problems. I think there's societal problems that are so now deeply ingrained in the way that our lives are led, that as long as famous people have money to burn, and like one of the things that we came to but when we talk about civil lawsuits, someone like, did you cover the ASA and all of this stuff and the Adult Survivors Act and all this stuff? We now live in a society where we are so litigious and we are so divided, right? That I don't know if there is no snap your fingers and solve the problem fix to that. I think that the best thing for everybody is to focus on how they can live their lives as healthily and positively as possible. Pick your partners to the best of your abilities. Make your decisions as best you can. If you get one of those cases where something awful happens to you, by God, I hope you figure it out and you work it out. But societally, I think raising kids with your values would help, and trying to help show them that the world does not have to be as adversarial between the sexes. I think the divorce rate probably plays a big part in this, right? Without healthy examples of two parents at home cohabitating, raising kids together, no wonder we're also so divided. Like the issues that make up these problems would take 10,000 podcasts from 10,000 different people 10,000 times over, and you still never get a solution for it. At the end of the day, you can only really focus on yourself.
And it's true that the best role model, the best, I think, inducement to marriage is to have seen a healthy relationship between your parents. And, I mean, that's, I can say absolutely that I think that some of the things that I am not doing in life, like I'm not having kids, I'm not getting legally married, these are direct results of what I saw in my parents' lives and how miserable they were. And they were very traditional, and mom wanted, for most of the time was stay at home. And it was like, and I heard wives submit to your husbands all the time, that verse from the Bible. And I really grew to hate it. And so, that's the thing is people, I do agree. It's like that Michael Jackson song, The Man in the Mirror. The best thing that people could do would be, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight for against injustice. And I'm going to keep making the videos on Me Too hoaxes and all of that. And you're going to keep speaking out about the things that you talk about at times. So we get that. But I guess that it's just that when I watch someone like Pearl, or I see the response to her, it does seem to me at times that certain things that are it's just a part of the relationship between the sexes, or it's just the frustration of having to deal with the opposite sex. It gets so like hyper politicized, or it becomes like a reason to really hate on somebody. But maybe, maybe that's my misunderstanding of her, or maybe that's a trigger. But I definitely, there are things, but I definitely don't like the hypocrisy that I think she's selling when she is so judgmental about the non-trad life for women. And yet she herself seems to be very much pursuing a non-trad life. So I just would like that explained, because I do think that it's important for women to understand that just like a professional life, a career, all that has been, I think, maybe hyper romanticized or idealized in our modern society and by feminism, whatever. I also would warn you against hyper romanticizing or idealizing even things like motherhood and family, but which is not to discourage people from them. But look, life is rough. Everything has its downsides. So I don't know.
I think also for me, like maybe it's just because when you do this for work, and what you do is you talk about these stories every day. Like there's a certain level of detachment for me now where I can't get myself angry. I can't really get myself, like I'll read a lot of these, like I'm in a lot of ways, I call it post-concern reality, where it's just like, when you're constantly just bombarded with new information, all of it designed to piss you off, all of it designed to get you to click on something. And I see every one of these stories, when a celebrity goes through something like this, like what happened with Johnny Depp, what's happening with all of these celebrities now, all of this stuff happens. And I can't bring myself to be super, super emotionally invested, other than finding it interesting societally how it's affecting those around me, or
kind of in an anthropological way.
I can't find myself. First of all, with all of the celebrity cases, I'm not hitching my wagon to anyone in Hollywood, not even Johnny Depp, none of them. Hollywood is an absolutely, there was a thing that came out recently where what's her name, the lady who played Jodie Foster in the new Thor movie, Natalie Portman, said it was amazing that I got out without being harmed, or that I acted as a kid without being harmed. It's an industry full of very, very evil people that have been documented over the decades of doing evil things to one another. So when I see all this stuff happen, and I understand that that is what's going on in these industries, I can't look at it from a personal perspective. I can have opinions on what I think it's doing to the culture, but I'm not gonna get emotionally enraged by stuff. I'll save my rage for the things that happen in my actual life, I think.
Well, okay, so speaking of rage, I did piss some people off this week, and I saw that you were covering it today on your channel. So to shift gears, I did piss some people off by, yes, I added my voice to the chorus criticizing, wait, which Willis is it? Is it Scout?
It's Scout Will, not Rumor, Scout. It's Scout, not Rumor. I thought it was Rumor, it was Scout. That's what you get for naming your kids Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah.
Oh yeah, there's Tallulah too. Which one of them likes to walk around topless because she's like into free the nipple? Is that Tallulah?
That must be Tallulah. I only know Rumor because Rumor's an actress. So
yeah, she also she was like a Broadway star. She did Chicago. She was the lead in Chicago. I was really impressed or surprised.
So you were critical of her posting the video?
Okay, but yeah, so Scout. Okay, so and I'm not going to post a picture or the video here, mostly out of laziness. But some people thought that it was bad. It was wrong to even be reposting it. But people can look it up if they want to. But basically, the long and the short of it is one of Bruce Willis's daughters, Scout. She posted it turns out it was a video. I actually just saw the still, but the video maybe was better. But I saw the still picture of her with her dad, with Bruce Willis, who has some form of dementia that apparently
aphasia,
it's getting more advanced. And so here's the thing. She posted a picture. She looked great, smiling, and she and her dad were kind of touching hands or whatever. Mm-hmm. He looked, I mean, honestly, and it's not, I mean, I'm not dragging him or dissing him or whatever, but I thought that he looked really bad in that photo, and I thought he looked frail, and I thought that he looked confused. And do I personally like care in the sense of like he's not meeting my expectations? No, but here's my issue is that Bruce Willis was someone for whom his image was really, really important, as a big star. And I've read some about him, and I read Demi Moore's bio, which was positive mm-hmm. toward him overall. And it was very clear from what I've read and stuff that he was very proud of and invested in his image. And it was very much this suave, tough guy, attractive, all of that, and very in command. And so that's one thing is I think, what was his daughter thinking, putting that image out there, knowing that there's a good possibility that if Bruce were really cognizant of what's going on, he would be embarrassed by that. That's one thing. And then the other thing is I just have to ask, who are these pictures for? Because is it really raising awareness about his problem to the extent that people are going to see these pictures?
Was that what the caption said?
No, I'm just asking. She just said the caption was just something like time with my dad or something. It was something sweet. But I don't know. I just feel like these kids, these Hollywood kids, have just gotten, like everyone else, I guess, just gotten so sort of narcissistically self-obsessed with putting everything on social media. And to me, it was like she was sharing that, but her dad looked bad in it. I don't know. What did you think?
Then I'll ask you a question. Then does that mean that everyone from a famous family now has to forego they have social media just like we do? Are they to now no longer post pictures with their family just because their parents are famous, and people in our sphere are going to accuse them of being clout chasing, I guess? I saw that image. And
let me just say, I'm sorry. Let me just say, since you asked that question. So, and I don't say this like for people to go, or whatever, like, but my dad, he died of dementia. It's not the same type as Bruce had. And I have, pictures like that he looks really terrible at the end, and it was very tragic. And I have pictures where he looks old and frail and out of it. And yes, I keep those privately but I would never put that out. He's not even a star. To me, it just seemed kind of callous and selfish, but you go ahead.
I wouldn't post a picture of a family member in that position. I understand that other people from different generations, I don't know how old she is. My guess is that how charitable do you want to be with your interpretation of what she did? I look at that image, and I don't look at somebody who's out there to to make her dad look bad. I see a daughter who caught a glimpse of an image with her dad and felt the need to share it to people on social media. Is she sharing it to the millions of people that follow her, or the hundreds of thousands of people that follow her, or is she sharing it for the hundreds of people that follow her that she actually knows and wants to share it with, right? You could make the argument, if we were being super, super like anal retentive, make a private profile and share it with just the people that you allow to follow you that are part of a more personal page. I will point out that Bruce Willis sold his likeness to a deepfake company for
Oh,
people
really?
to use. So like his image has been sold time and time again over stuff like that. I think this is an interesting debate. I personally, now this is me in my feels. This is purely an emotional interpretation here. I didn't see anything all of that. This is what I pointed out earlier. This is not that image of the lady who's dancing in the NICU with her kid in the bed saying, "My child has RSV," and doing a stupid TikTok dance. These are not the same. I don't see the. If
That
you haven't
sounds
seen
horrible.
that, oh, it's okay. So it's this video, right? It's this woman who's got like, she's got a kid. He's in the NICU unit of a hospital, and she's like, "My baby was diagnosed with RSV," and she starts doing a TikTok dance, and it is one of the cringiest things I've ever seen in my entire life. This is not that. Also, plenty of us back in the day would have taken pictures with elderly family members. You could even make the argument, if we're talking consent here, how many times have you taken a picture with like a grandma or a grandpa? They don't know where the hell that picture is going. They can't even consent because they can't even understand what the hell social media is. And I think you have to operate in a certain level of faith for something like this, because there is no right answer. So given the fact that I don't know this lady, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say, sure, like, I don't think she meant anything malicious by it.
I definitely don't think she meant anything malicious. I would say the worst that I'm accusing her of is just being so too narcissistically focused on herself, and oh, this is a cute image, people will go all about me with my dad, and little too calloused or unthinking about maybe what is right for him. But I agree with you.
That's how we share things now. That's how we share things now. Like, not us personally, that's how many people.
Why does she have to share that with everybody though? Like any part of his dementia, like with the world.
His wife has also shared images with them from holiday. I think
I don't like that either.
Images. Yeah, there was also images. What was it, over 4th of July, I think, or something, with all of the family together and stuff like that. Like, and also we're not privy to what he's like in his more lucid moments or anything like that. This is the problem of being given the 30,000-foot view of somebody's life without having a deeper understanding of what's actually going on. One of the things about the internet is you have to really become okay with not being understood, with being mistaken, right? You have to be able to, if you're going to post something like that, you have to be okay and know you're either A, what you said, maybe a little bit narcissistic and not thinking, or B, you do understand, you do believe that you're doing something that's not wrong, and you have to learn to be okay with being misunderstood.
I agree with that, and I don't think that anyone should be posting at her or anything like that. And I guess there was really no point in me even, perhaps I'm taking it too far, and even bringing it up, mentioning it. I just will say that from my limited perspective, I appreciated Sandra Bullock's approach much more, just personal preference. But like, we did not know until that man died that she had been waging a huge, horrible battle with ALS, which is like one of the worst things you can get. And so just me personally, I guess, let me just put it this way. I shouldn't criticize Willis. So let me just say that I was especially impressed with how Sandra Bullock handled things, but that's not how everyone chooses to handle things. Okay. I wanted to ask you also, we've never talked about complex, hot button ideas like about immigration or things related to that. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I did want to bring up Conor McGregor and just see how you feel. I mean, you can talk about whatever, immigration, whatever, I don't care, but see how you feel though about the fact that he's being investigated by the I guess the Irish police. He's
Yeah,
being investigated for his social media post, and I'm sure you've seen the post in particular that I'm talking
I
about,
did.
where he said several things. He said, "Ireland, we are at war. Ireland's at war." He spoke about how there are people doing these types of things, committing these stabbings, these attacks, who shouldn't be in our country, and we're not going to be told by others how we should conduct ourselves, that sort of thing. So he's outraged, and I know a lot of people are outraged about these stabbings. There were children stabbed. One apparently is going to have significant problems for the rest of their life based on the injuries they received. And then there was another person stabbed, an adult. Anyway, and it was by someone who was an immigrant, had been apparently denied residency status, but then ended up, it was reversed, and so he ended up getting residency status. And apparently there is a lot of anger in Ireland. Even I was reading among the left wing in Ireland, left leaning people in Ireland, about immigration and about what they see as excessive immigration, and that a lot of people are being let into their country that they don't think it's healthy or helpful.
I'm just picturing people in Texas and on the southern border, like first time, like that's the world that we live in now, in a globalist society, in a society where these issues are going to be something that everyone has to deal with, because most of these governments love the idea of unfettered immigration because it helps them in pushing their political agenda. Like, more than anything, what people should be outraged about, beyond, like, if you don't want to get into the immigration issue, fine, that's perfectly reasonable to not want to talk about it. But the idea that he's being investigated for social media posts,
Right.
that should frighten everybody. That should frighten everybody. And we all know that living here in the US, you are unbelievably blessed to live in a country that has, at least for the time being, a constitutional right to free speech, where, as we know, the UK and other places don't have such a thing. You can be arrested for Facebook posts. You can be arrested for saying for criticizing a female cop in the UK.
Yeah,
right?
I saw that. So a guy was arrested for misogynist speech, and we don't know. I don't know what that is. Look, if the guy was actually really harassing that woman, and I think it's no problem to eject someone like that from a game. And if it's real, like, harassment in the sense of like physically doing anything, or if he's been stalking her, okay. But it sounds like he was just jeering at her, and he got arrested.
And in the fact that these the lady who got arrested on Facebook for criticizing a neighbor or something like that, Conor McGregor, for stuff like this, that is terrifying. And it's a lot of those times the doomers here in America are like, that's coming here one day, and they could be right, because they love to talk about hate speech and how we need to crack down on hate speech. And certainly, since a majority of the places where these discussions are happening online anyways, where your rights for the most part aren't really there, right? Like, you're not constitutionally protected
Right.
here because your protections are from the government, not from these private platforms. Now, the Twitter files revealed that there was an FBI desk at Twitter. So there's already a bunch of overlap there that's unbelievably deeply concerning. But it's just like, I read stuff like that. Maybe I'm just jaded, but I read stuff like that and I'm like, of course, right? Like, what breaks my heart more is for the everyday citizen that it happens to, not the celebrity. The
Right,
celebrities
not
get the money. The celebrities got the money and the clout to fight back. The everyday citizen who just gets angry at someone online and says something mean, and then has cops show up at their door with none of the money or resources to fight the injustice that's being done against them, that's who I weep for more than anything. Or Canada. Canada's just as bad. Like, we're very lucky to live here, where, at least for the time being, we're pretty much free to tell everyone they suck online if we want to.
Yeah, and I know that even though we don't have laws against speech in general, I know that still people say, and rightly so, well, there's still a lot of censorship that happens online by these different companies. And I wanted to ask you, I have heard.
Yeah, it's only the government that you're somewhat protected against now. The companies are all out to get you. Absolutely.
Right. I wanted to ask your opinion because I've heard people that I respect voice two different views on this. Do you think that Elon Musk has been a big protector of free speech online, or do you think that there is still a lot of, because one of my friends, that umbrella guy Tug, he says that he thinks there's still a lot of censorship, a lot of shadow banning. I don't want to misquote him, but I believe he posted on this a couple of weeks ago, and basically criticizing Elon Musk for not really being a full defender of free speech.
Yeah.
What do you think about Elon Musk and what he's done with Twitter, with X?
Too vast of a question. I haven't looked into it enough, other than following Elon and his posts on Twitter. Like shadow ban. How do they prove shadow banning?
See,
like,
I don't understand. Maybe people in our comments can tell me. I don't know how you know if it's going on or if it's been done to you. People will tell me sometimes, "Oh, I think you're shadow banned," and I guess people are like, they're sort of like artificial. The idea would be that these companies are, I guess, artificially deflating your exposure to viewers.
Well,
Or
I hope that one day I can be important enough to be shadow banned. I like there's that radical ownership again. Like when I look at something that I've made and it doesn't do well, my first thought isn't that the overlords are out to get me. My first thought is what you made sucked. So
well, and that's probably, honestly, that's probably a better view, because even though I don't think that's true necessarily, at least that inspires you to improve. Whereas if you think you're shadow banned, you're just gonna be like, well, what's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's no upside to just at least if you can convince yourself that it's your own responsibility, you keep trying, right? And unless I can it can be like actually proven to me, and I have no idea how they would do that for individual accounts. If they can prove to me that that's happened to me, then I guess that's one thing. But for these other people, like, just keep fighting. And as for Elon Musk, I like a lot of what he says, at least when he tweets and stuff like that. I think he's pretty bold with a lot of the stuff that he's willing to post. I'm not on the spicy side of Twitter, right? I'm not on the. I follow.
Well, let me ask you about something kind of controversial that Elon Musk did recently. So he announced, you're familiar with this. He announced that the phrase "from the river to the sea" and then also the term decolonization, that these would now be grounds for, I guess, suspending an account or blocking those posts. So
because he's saying what, their calls to violence.
Right, that to say "from the river to the sea" automatically means that there would be no Israel. If we take that literally, it automatically means there'd be no Israel, right? And then decolonization would be then a move to, like, I guess, remove Israelis from Palestine. Do you think that that's, even apart from the question of the war, right? Do you think that that's okay, or how do you feel about that, Elon Musk doing that?
It's funny because I've got like a friend, I guess I wouldn't really call him, an acquaintance that I used to know in skating, who lived in Italy. And he used to have he was a photographer, and he used to have an account that said it said decolonizing the camera. And it was about documenting people other than necessarily traditionally, people from Italy who lived in Italy or these accounts. Yeah. So he's not saying that, like, when he says decolonizing the camera, he's talking about photographing people who do not traditionally look like what you would imagine an Italian person would look like, and showcasing them to be what they are, which is Italian, right? So I just putting that broad of a ban on something when you don't know the context of what they're saying all the time. I believe that a lot of times when these activists scream it at these rallies, the ones who are at least somewhat informed on what's going on and the ones dumb enough to just chant along, but you don't penalize somebody for saying something dumb. You try to have a discussion with them and tell them why you think they're wrong. I don't tend to believe that censoring speech is the right idea in almost any case.
Well, I agree with you. I think that it should only be a kind of an ultimate, like last resort, or an extreme response to, like, the most extreme things. Like for instance, if I were to get on here and I were to say, I'll just pick Brett, and like, everybody, I hate Brett Dasovic, and we are going to assassinate him tonight. So I want y'all to meet me at such and such address. Have your guns and your machetes ready. We're going to do it. Obviously, that should not be allowed. But do I think it's okay to to voice even violent opinions? And in this case, we're talking about like metaphorical language that we can't exactly tie down to wanting violence. But to me, like I think that in a broad sense, that's just one of the things that we have to accept for with free speech. And I'll say this.
Then
Well,
then
I
they'll
was
have to ban all the rap songs that
well,
talk
the other
about
thing I was going to say
violence.
is this: how many people have tweeted in support of a particular side in a particular war? I mean, even going back to like wars that we've been in, the US has been
Mhm.
involved in or whatever, or tweeting or writing or what have you. To me, anytime someone says, I am on this person's side, or I'm on this side, I'm on the Israeli side, I'm on the Palestinian side in this war, what that means is, and therefore I am tolerant of others being killed, of an agenda that kills others. So to me, like any talk of war online in some way could be as construed as
Yeah.
inciting violence.
If you and as we know, if you censor them, first of all, if you one of the best benefits of letting people speak freely is that if they hold views that you find abhorrent, that makes them readily available to you. You now know who these people are. You know to avoid them if you don't want to interact with them, or you engage with them and you try to have a rational discussion with them. When you censor people, you put them underground, you put them in hiding, and then their views tend to not change. Very few people who get censored change their opinions and say, oh, wow, I was dumb, I'm going to change my views. If anything, it allows their views to cement and further believe, not only was I right, I'm being persecuted for being right. You don't change minds that way. You change minds by trying to engage them in rational discussion. Now, it may not work right then and there. Most of the time it doesn't, especially when it's combative. The reason why you try to levy your views, if you believe you're right, to a person like that, is that hopefully down the line, something happens at a more neutral time in their life that causes them to question what they believe. And hopefully, if you made your point, cogently and you get it across in a manner they can understand, that viewpoint will then come back to the forefront of their brain, and you help play a part, albeit later, in helping change that person's view.
I think that's a good perspective. Shane H. Wilder, I think that's one of yours, says, wait, Kurtz, I didn't catch that address. I've got a pen and paper. Could you repeat that? I would, but I'm going to be shadow banned if I say it one more time.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a little time left. Guys in the audience, guys and gals, we're typically going to be going for an hour and a half on these Monday nights until my schedule gets a little easier with other stuff going on in my life. But we've got a little time here. I wanted to ask Brett, because look, I am aware I'm not into comic book movies and stuff like that. I'm not into DC or Marvel or any of this. I am sort of vaguely aware that there's been some kind of like storm going on in relation to this movie, The Marvels. And like I've seen a lot of people freaking out online about how it had a really bad box office, or it didn't, or it's it's what have you. Can you just tell me and take a little time and explain to me, for dummies, for beginners, right? Yeah. What is this controversy?
Well, I'll do you one better. Disney right now has two movies that have come out in the last month that have absolutely bombed at the box office. One being The Marvels, starring Brie Larson, and the other one being their new Disney animated movie, Wish, which was their Thanksgiving Day offering. It was their Thanksgiving long weekend film of the year. It was the 100th anniversary movie for Disney, and it made just $49 million globally over all of the 5-day weekend on a budget of $200 million. No. 300 million once you include marketing. The Marvels was not able to break any better during its first week there, and in its third week, it fell down to the 6th spot at the box office. This week, Wish, which was a brand new Disney animated movie supposedly celebrating their 100th anniversary, came in 3rd place next to the second week of the new Hunger Games movie and the Napoleon movie from Ridley Scott. Both beat them at the box office. Disney is in very rough shape right now.
And is that because the movies are not good anymore, or is it because people are just really pissed about the woke stuff, or a little of both?
I didn't even consider the Marvels insanely woke. It was just a bad movie. It just wasn't a good movie. There was certainly like annoying, like all girls get along all the time and we're best friends, which is one of those tropes that
Was it
can
only
tend
about
to.
women? Are the Marvels just women?
The Marvels were, so it's Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and then Monica Rambeau. But the point being that there was like elements of it, but it's just a bad movie. And Wish was just, at least in my opinion, again, these are my opinions. Like, it doesn't mean if you like these movies, that's okay. You're allowed to like things, just like I like things that other people don't like, right? They were just, in my opinion, bad movies. And right now, the problem is that with the year that Disney's had, especially the last year and a half, there's no goodwill built up. This year, it's the first time since 2014 that they haven't had a movie make $1 billion at all at the box office. Not a single one made $1 billion. So, like, there's just no goodwill. They had the Indiana Jones flop, Haunted Mansion flopped, this flopped. All of their movies, for the most part, this year lost money. So, with no goodwill built up, that all was a product of the MCU doing so well from 2008 to 2018 or 2019. People just, and it's expensive as hell to go to the movies these days. Like, people just aren't really willing to risk it. They're going to go see something that they believe is a little bit less politically motivated, like Disney. They're going to go see Trolls. They're going to go see the Super Mario Brothers movie. They're going to go see one of these properties from Universal. Universal has absolutely been crushing it at the box office this year. Disney is in a slump right now. And part of it, I think, is the people's interpretation of what they consider woke. I don't like that term a whole lot because I find it to be a little bit broad. I think a lot of times people attribute woke where it's just bad. But in this case, like that's what people are not, they're not giving the benefit of the doubt anymore. And bringing back Bob Iger, who used to be the CEO of Disney, then left, Bob Chapek took over, and now Bob Iger's back, hasn't helped them at all.
Well, it's really, if that franchise, I mean, if the Disney name and if Disney films are, if they are in this kind of condition financially, that's really pretty remarkable, because Disney has been for so long such a reliably successful brand in various ways. I hear that the theme parks are having problems too, that there's a massive Star Wars, it's a ride, or it's actually a housing location, like this, like it's like you're supposed to feel like you're on the starship, but apparently they were having to give away free reservations to people because people didn't want this thing and they didn't want to pay the thousands of dollars to stay here.
There are the great thing is like if you love that stuff, like we talk mostly about the movies, there are whole channels dedicated to like just Disney parks,
bragging on Disney.
Like no, not always. I mean, I assume that most of them are, when it's good, right? They're not gonna just rag on them, but there are whole channels dedicated to just the parks and just talking about what's going on with Disney culture. I will say that Swifties may be bad. People may not like Swifties. Disney adults, a little weird to me as well.
Yeah. I actually have one in my family that I absolutely love. So I mean, he's never going to watch this and get this far in this, but I do know several actually people firsthand who really love Disney. But with them, it's very much often tied to like nostalgic feelings of growing up and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that those parks aren't cool. I really like Universal. I always thought Universal was a little bit even a step up from the Disney parks, but
Universal seems to be crushing it. Like right now, Universal seems to be, and they get it with like half of the fanfare, right? What was funny is we were talking about about how this year Barbie made like $1.4 billion, right? And it got all of this press and people were making a huge deal about it. The Super Mario Brothers movie made like almost as much, and like nobody even remembers that it came out at the start of the year. Like it made like 1.3 billion and nobody even remembers it. But that's because of the power of the IP of Nintendo, right?
Okay.
And stuff like that. Just in Warner, like Universal is really, really good. I also think that Warner Brothers, I think Universal is the one who has the Harry Potter stuff as well. Like all of those, people just feel like there's less baggage with the stuff that's not Disney. Disney has really poisoned their brand in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, even someone like me who's totally out of the loop on this stuff, I definitely have perceived that. What do you think about Aquaman? Is it true that Amber Heard was completely cut out of the trailer?
Yeah.
Not in the preview?
Oh yeah, we should have talked about that first, huh? Like, yeah, I don't think there's a supposedly, like, there's a screenshot, there's an image of her supposedly laying dead, but there are no active shots of her in the new trailer, and her fans were pissed. as if people who are going to see a movie just to spite Johnny Depp are actually going to move the needle on box office. The projections for Aquaman are so low that even Amber Heard's stans wouldn't be able to fix it. But now they can blame Amber Heard either way. They can say either people didn't go see it because we cut her out of the movie, or they did go see it because they cut her out of the movie. Either way, they're covered now. They can blame Amber Heard no matter what.
I was thinking about Amber Heard and what I would do career-wise if I were her. And I think that I guess that because of what happened with the whole defamation case and everything, I guess that her writing a book, I mean, maybe it's technically possible, but maybe it's something that she's scared to do because she would be lying her head off about Johnny Depp. But I think that if Amber started pursuing villainous roles,
Yeah.
like I know she can't act as well as Sharon Stone, but maybe like sort of lower tiered kind of Basic Instinct type thing. I mean, I think that she could get a following for that because people are more likely to see her in the villain role. But to me, like seeing her, even I didn't watch the movie, but even some of the clips that I saw from In the Fire, the new movie that she did, where she plays a female doctor. She's like a Dr. Quinn medicine woman or something type. But seeing her like doing this really serious dramatic role and saying trust the science or whatever that quote is, like it's just laughable. I just don't think that's the direction that's going to work. And go ahead.
She'll be fine. Like the people are still working with Kevin Spacey. Like she's gonna get work. She's not gonna get big blockbuster work if I had to guess, but she's gonna get her indie roles and she'll be top billing on indie roles, right? Like it's like you get a big name at a discount rate, right? Like so I don't see her career, like she's not gonna get the career she wanted, but my guess is like acting wise, she will still get steady work for the foreseeable future. I said,
she gets attention, and she gets attention from those of us who don't like her, and maybe that's our problem or whatever, but she does get attention. And I think that that's something that a director, particularly someone who's doing a little film that he knows she knows is going to go unnoticed, unless they put a name that's kind of provocative in, and people will say, oh, and there are a number of people like we're talking about here who will see an Amber Heard movie just because Amber Heard is in it. So I have to agree with you there. Now you mentioned Kevin Spacey, and I think that it is, I'm glad that he's getting some work, but it does bother me that a man who has now twice been acquitted in courts of law, he was sued civilly in a court in America and he won. We're not talking about a nothing verdict. I don't know if you can mistrial in civil court, right? But we're talking about like he won, and then he had criminal charges that were brought against him in Great Britain, where he had multiple accusers. He won that, he was acquitted. So he is now twice in courts of law on two different continents. He has been acquitted. Plus, there were earlier other allegations that ended up being investigated and no charges were filed on this. I'm just saying that so many people like to say in society, court, the legal system is where people should go. And we don't want to see this adjudicated on social media or whatever. We want to see it adjudicated in the legal system where there's a process and professionalism or what have you. Well, this has happened now twice for Kevin Spacey. I don't understand. He may be guilty. Okay. But I'm not saying he is, because for instance, Anthony Rapp, his main accuser, his story was completely ridiculous and debunked on multiple levels. But I don't know the Kevin Spacey case like super well. He may be, there's a chance he's guilty, perhaps people think that, but I don't agree with a society where you lose your entire career and your means of supporting yourself based on, yes, just public allegations.
Yeah. He shouldn't have made that weird Christmas video where he looked like a supervillain. like here's the thing.
That was a weird video.
I agree with everything you just said. But given that Hollywood is the industry that it is, I tend to, when I see these cases, the reason why I don't pass judgment one way or the other is I say, yeah, they probably did it, but I'm never going to know, so what does it matter? Like, yeah, they probably did something, right? In an industry as evil as Hollywood for a lot of these people, but should that preclude them from getting work when it's not proven in a court of law? No, but we don't live in a world where that's that rational anymore, right? Like now, the things that the things that are adjudicated on social media really are how people live and die. But for Kevin Spacey, he's still going to get work. He's still going to get work. P. Diddy is still gonna have his vodka company or whatever liquor company he has, and he's still gonna make music and reality TV shows and clothes. The sad thing is, in a lot of ways, for like the cases when we were talking about with like Diddy and was Jamie Foxx, a lot of what it is now is like civil cases being what they are. It really does feel kind of like the way that we punish big corporations. It's like fines, right? Like everything's legal for a price. And for us, like for me, from an outsider looking in, the reason I don't like attach my, I don't hitch my wagon to any of these people is I just say, yeah, again, detached. I'm detached and I'm unable to get angry about any of this stuff. I'm like, yeah, what do I know? Did they do it? Maybe. Hollywood's full of scumbags with just as little, like, how much evidence was there against Weinstein? Physical evidence. No physical evidence.
Well, there were a number of
years old.
Well, they did have him on tape admitting to groping a woman, and I don't know if that was used in trial or not, but I mean they had him on tape, and then but there were a number of Weinstein cases that were deeply problematic where the women actually fully consented and just, didn't like it. There were some also where he was actually physically forcing himself and so forth. I don't want to minimize that. But I understand what you're saying about how we can't totally know, but I'm not really asking or expecting that people should know or that they should even have a strong opinion. What I want is for people just not to be punished without it being legally adjudicated. And like you say, Kevin Spacey, he's still getting work. I think that he's gotten a role in like one smaller indie film. Like he was huge star. He got knocked off of House of Cards and all of that. I really just want a last season of House of Cards, honestly.
Yeah, that last season wasn't good. The last season wasn't good.
They tried to do this Hillary Clinton thing where, now it's Claire's turn and whatever. And
they should have actually gotten Hillary. They should have just swapped out Claire with Hillary Clinton. That would have been good. Just make evil Hillary Clinton the last season of House of Cards. But see, there you go. Play into the villain role right there.
Maybe Hillary Clinton can do a movie with Amber Heard. What do you think?
She can be Hillary Hinton on House of Cards and just go and start offing people to become president.
Okay, last question. How long do you think it is before we get a TV series, a drama, a TV drama like a Ryan Murphy type drama about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard? Surely it's going to happen.
Yeah, like I wonder if Hollywood likes to do the true like what they do, the true crime series. They had there was the really bad one about
like the OJ one, the OJ one that Ryan.
Well, no, the People versus OJ Simpson. That was like the true, right? Like, but what wasn't there like an Amber Heard Johnny Depp doc on Netflix that basically made Johnny Depp the bad guy?
It was, I mean, yes, there was a documentary that a lot of people hated on Netflix. And I didn't think that it was even though I was made to look bad for the 15 seconds that I was in it, I didn't think it was as bad as a lot of Johnny supporters felt. But yes, there were some ways that it definitely, that it was definitely misleading. And I think bent over backwards trying to give Amber's side a fair shake. I think a lot of us had complaints about the fact that we were depicted in very negative, those of us who were in it, in very negative lights. And then there were a number of people who, like Popcorn Planet, whole chunks of their show were used without them being paid for it or approached or giving a permission for it. So that was
YouTube makes that. What is that? YouTube make that free fair use somehow? Like, how does that even work?
They ended up getting an attorney, the DUI guy, who was also a big Johnny Depp commentator during the trial. And the DUI guy negotiated on behalf of a number of these people. I was on someone else's show, so I couldn't be a part of it, but he negotiated like on his behalf and on behalf of a number of people, and they ended up getting some money for it retroactively. So yeah, Netflix got in some trouble for that, or whatever production company did. Okay.
Crazy that they think they can just get away with it.
It is. It's audacious, and it is crazy. Derpwing Duck, I like that. Says Weinstein's crime was publicly flaunting that women can be bought. You'll note not a single one of them complained before doodling him. Hiya, Britt. Well, the Weinstein thing, it's a whole can of worms that I have addressed maybe once or twice in a live stream, and it's something that I'm very hesitant to. It's the case against Weinstein or cases against him, something I'm very hesitant to critique in any way, because people are already on a hair trigger with me. And the more men that I defend, the more that they say, she doesn't think anyone's guilty. I do think Weinstein is guilty of sexual harassment. I do think that there were certain cases where I do think he actually assaulted women. But I will agree with kind of what you're getting at there, that there were a number of cases or allegations against Weinstein where it seemed to me it was completely consensual activity, and women were just retroactively framing it as assault. And look, when you go into, as one woman did, I've watched the documentary about Weinstein, when you go into a man's hotel room the second time, the first after he's already made a pass at you and you said you didn't like it, you go into his hotel room on a second night and he comes out naked, and you say to yourself, well, I'll just, I'll see what happens. And then he has you come over to him and has you jerk him off, and you're just standing there jerking him off. To me, there are several steps of consensuality that you're passing through in that situation.
Was the door blocked? Was the door blocked like Louis C.K.? The thing about Louis C.K. supposedly blocking the door, right? Did you hear the story a couple weeks ago that who was it that was said she went to a meeting with a Sony executive in the 80s, and he just dropped his pants and pulled it out right in front of her, and she just giggled, and he got flustered and just walked out. Who was that? Was that who was it from Basic Instinct?
Oh, Sharon Stone?
It was like Sharon Stone.
Okay.
And she's like, yeah. And I just laughed. And then he walked out through a secret door. And I'm like, it was the 80s. There was probably so much cocaine in this dude's system. Like he went to a back room where there was just an executive table full of cocaine and Quaaludes. I am sure it was the 80s. Like these, like I said, the reason why I tend to have no opinion and fall on the side of they probably did something isn't to say that they deserve to lose their work. The sad fact of the matter is, right now, is that the world doesn't work in that linear or rational of a fashion, meaning that these companies, people are losing their jobs because of their takes on Israel-Palestine right now, right? Like, we live in a world now where you're always, my statement is, you're always running for president. If you're on social media and you're a public figure of any sort, you now have to live your life all the time as if you're running for president. And that's not good, bad. It's not the right thing, maybe, but it's the fact of the world we live in. So who knows?
That is true. So everybody, we're going to wrap it up. Hope you've enjoyed this. And I didn't even have to bring out GI Troll to regulate anyone.
Yeah.
So that's good. But I thanks to the moderators, Vanessa and AJ. And I know Laura B couldn't be here tonight. Rebel Bird, sorry if you're here as well. I'm going to put up the link to Brett's channel, his show,
yes.
Pop Culture Crisis.
Tomorrow, guys, I want everybody to come out tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern, 500th episode. We will be live streaming from 12 to 5. The first 2 hours are going to be a standard structured type show. After that, we're going to hang out. We're going to talk. We're going to take all the super chats. We're going to hang out and talk with everyone. It's going to be a ton of fun. You should come hang out with us.
Absolutely. If you haven't watched his show, the 500th episode is a perfect time to check it out. And they cover all kinds of stuff, mostly pop culture. There's other stuff that comes in, some politics and what have you, but a lot of interesting things and more variety generally than I cover on my shows. So you should check that out. And everybody, my PayPal link, PayPal and Patreon links are below in the description. I'll add it to the comments, but tips appreciated. But yeah, Brett, we'll see you next Monday at same time, 9 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll see you then, guys.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you all later.